YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
And false stories from phony sites to run circles around major news outlets.
Many people don't know the difference between something real and something created to deceive them.
Open your eyes.
If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. I think it's safe to say that there is very little resistance right now in the world when it comes to these data centers that are getting built out. There's very little resistance when it comes to all of the stuff revolving around Donald Trump building out artificial intelligence infrastructure. And that, of course, is because 10 out of 10 people don't have the slightest clue what these data centers are actually there for. All they hear about is how they're coming, how we need them, and of course, as we've seen recently, how we have to accelerate, according to the White House and Donald Trump, how we have to accelerate federal permits of data center infrastructure. And of course, that big bad bill, or as he called it, the big beautiful bill, was all about, if you read the meat of that bill, it was all about giving AI and big tech carte blanche, allowing them to do whatever they please over the next 10 years. You could even read in the document, in general, except as provided in paragraph 2, no state or political subdivision thereof may enforce during the 10-year period beginning on the date of the enactment of this act any law or regulation of that state or a political subdivision thereof limiting, restricting, or otherwise regulating artificial intelligence models, artificial intelligence systems, or automated decision systems entered into interstate commerce, which means these data centers are fully provided for by our tax money and are fully protected by our government. There's a 10-year window here where there is no resistance allowed. If you try to take these infrastructures down, you will be thrown in prison. If the state actually tried, which we know they never will, to remove these from their states, well, those states would be obviously not allowed to do so because the federal government has already gotten involved and told them that they can't remove it, but they wouldn't do it anyway because all of these politicians on both sides of the aisle are working together to bring this in, which is why they are sabotaging our current infrastructure. So that being said, I wanted to do a video talking about how they're accelerating these data centers and how we all need to be aware and prepared and start sharing information about these actual data centers. For starters, the data centers, their purpose is to store and stash every piece of information they have on all of us, which includes things like our DNA as well. But everything you've ever written on the internet will be inside of these massive data centers and, of course, be used against you when the time is right. We've seen the predictive programming in shows like Westworld where they reveal all the things that have been said in private, whether it's a private text message that you thought was once private or anything that was caught on a camera that you thought you were doing without being seen. These are all things that they have, and they're documenting, and they're building out in these data centers. Now, the data centers serve a larger purpose than just that. There's a lot of things that tie into the neural network, which I'll get into detail about in the future. But let's just start with the data centers in general. Because remember, on July 23rd, Trump signed that executive order to expedite the development of these data centers around the United States of America without, of course, anybody even realizing it. We need to know where these data centers are. So far, they've told us North Virginia, Phoenix, Dallas, Silicon Valley, Chicago, Atlanta, Portland, New York, New Jersey, Seattle, and Los Angeles. But there's more than that because we know Arizona has one. I believe every single state will have their own data center. So when things actually hit the fan, because they will in the future, and I might not be here to see it, I might be long past, but this will happen because we're not going to see pushback on AI governance. Everybody is going to continue to be distracted with Jeffrey Epstein, with people who identify as, cantaloupes or whatever else we see going on in the world. That's just nonsense that they continue to push down everyone's throat to get everybody angry at one another, all the genders, all the pronouns. Easy distraction while they build this thing out, and nobody seems to notice it and nobody seems to care. And the information the majority of these sheeple are getting is all from controlled media. The alt-right is serving its purpose. It's keeping them stuck in the left-right paradigm. And those people are not evolving at all or growing mentally at all. They are stuck inside of a simulation that keeps them looking at nonsense, honey traps, or rabbit holes that the CIA is actually creating, like the Epstein flight logs. So it's important to know where these locations are, because when things hit the fan, these are the places that are going to need to be targeted. Civilians will need to know what they've been doing, why these data centers are there, how these things are bleeding out our resources like water and electricity, which I'll get into momentarily. But you also need to know, how in the world do we actually take down a data center, right? Because these are massive data centers. They're going to be heavily guarded with military. It's going to be a big operation if anybody is actually going to attempt to take these things down in the future. But an EMP would be the most effective way. Now, it's almost nearly impossible to get your hands on any type of electromagnetic pulse gun that's military grade. People can build their own, but they will not be strong enough to do much. But they want to make sure that nobody can, right? And one of the things that's needed to build out an electromagnetic pulse in the construction of the device is copper. Copper is a commonly used material because copper can be used as an electrical conductor. So conveniently, what we've seen a lot on the news recently is about how there's going to be a massive shortage of copper, right? Suddenly everybody wants copper. No, we don't have any copper left because there's a driven, surging demand and constrained supply, supposedly, when it comes to copper. And copper resources, they are abundant, but extraction struggles to keep pace with consumption are leading to price increases and supply chain disruption. So we're seeing a shortage of a lot of these resources at a time where they're building out these data centers. Think about that. There's a massive shortage of copper. What's another thing? Well, magnets are another thing that we know can damage computers, right? And neodymium is a magnet, a specific magnet that can pose a large threat to computers. And of course, there's a shortage of those as well, because everybody apparently wants to get their hands on neodymium magnets. So there's shortages at the same time these things are going up, and that's not a coincidence. That is being done by design because they want to make sure when things do hit the fan, if people do begin to rise up against what's happening and they do finally band together and realize that they've been duped and they're finally willing to put their differences aside to band together, well, they'll realize, well, all we really might have is some people might have some ammo, but what's the ammo going to do? I mean, the ammo will help, of course, get through the military defense, but how do you actually take care of the technology when we have all of these Tesla bots and all of these drones flying around? You'll need electromagnetic pulses to take those things down. Bullets will not be able to take them down. Bullets will help, of course, with the military, but an EMP is probably the best thing civilians could actually have to defend themselves, because the military will be running on advanced technology, and the only way you'll be able to disrupt their technology is with something like an electromagnetic pulse. Now, the other thing we got to look at to hopefully wake people up is the stuff with climate change, right? And we've heard all about climate change. We all know it's weather modification and geoengineering, that they're manipulating and modifying the weather. But one of the things they're conditioning people into is rationing and the depletion of resources, how we're running out of resources, right? Climate change is expected to exacerbate the depletion of natural resources and potentially lead to increased demands for resource rationing, particularly for electricity and water. So while that stuff is happening, you might say, well, what is all the weather modification? How is that going to actually affect water? And how is that going to actually affect electricity? Well, they're going to convince you that a lot of things are responsible for the hell that they're bringing to Earth while they're all underground. But really, you'll see that the data centers are the core of a lot of the resource draining. Here are some stories that are out there. Kansas City data centers could use millions of gallons of water per day. Millions of gallons of water per day. Now, remember, this is the same government that's telling you during droughts not to use your sprinklers, not to shower. California mandating people shut their water off on certain days of the week. People finding shortages of water to consume, to live, right? Water is really the life force for humanity. So it's not a coincidence that these data centers use so much water. And people say, well, what do they use water for? Well, they claim that the water is needed for cooling the computer systems to prevent overheating because there's a mass amount of computers. So that's obviously more important than getting water to civilians, right? So they're going to drain and deplete the water supply and force people to ration water, which should make people say, wait a minute, What are these data centers even for? Why do we have these? But you don't hear anyone saying it. Now we're hearing about the depletion of resources like water. How about electricity? For anyone that hasn't seen, Cheyenne is going to have a massive AI data center in Wyoming, and it's going to use more electricity than all the homes in Wyoming combined. And here's Arizona. Phoenix power grid is getting pushed to the limit, right? So people out there shouldn't be worrying about the prices. They should be worrying about the rationing of electricity and water. And remember that your electricity allocation will be controlled via these data centers and smart devices. So sure, they'll use things like climate change and carbon emissions to tell you that we need to use less electricity and less water. Well, what do you think one of the main reasons they want you to use less electricity and less water are for? Yeah, to make you live like a prisoner, of course, imprisoned in your home with all of your tech, but also so that they can feed the beast, so they can feed these massive data centers. So rationing is going to be key, and it's going to tie into the climate laws. You're going to hear about all this stuff and how it's beneficial to the climate and the environment, and everybody's got to be on board with it. And this is a news clip I'm going to play for you from Kansas City talking about how much water these data centers are using. This is social pre-programming for what the future looks like with massive water shortages and shutoffs, because they will be shutting off your water and forcing you to ration your water, especially when you have all those smart devices connected to your water, to your gas, to your refrigerator, right? Now you start thinking to yourself, why did I get all this stuff? These data centers can now control it. They can say this house has hit this limit, off, off, off. That's how they get you to ration. People think it's like, oh, we're going to tell you how much food you're allowed to eat. We're going to tell you how much water you're allowed to consume. Well, when they shut it off, when it hits a certain amount because you put a smart device on your home, well, guess what? You're screwed. But take a look at some of this stuff airing on local news in Kansas City about how much water these things are going to use. And don't worry about how much it's going to cost you, because of course they want that to be the distraction. It's going to cost us more money. We're going to have to pay more for water. No, you're just going to have less water to consume. And they're going to tell you at first that it's not going to affect how much water you can consume. But of course, that's a lie, like everything else we see on the news.
Tonight, we continue our coverage on data centers coming to the metro, the massive projects. They're an important tool to keep big tech running. But at what cost to those who live nearby? One of the major concerns, the resources requiring large amounts of electricity and water. KSHB 41 reporter Isabella Ladon joins us live to continue her Data, Dollars, and Demand series. I know you've obtained some records from KC Water about data centers. Bring us up to date with what you learned.
Yeah, Kevin, well, the contracts between Meta and Google and KC Water give us a better idea of just how much water these massive institutions could be using. Meta's data center in the Northland could use up to 9.5 million gallons of water a day. The average household in KC uses just under 100 gallons of water a day. The AI explosion is driving up demand for data centers, but it's unclear how much energy and water they'll use in Kansas City once fully built. Yuri Dvorkin is an expert on data center energy usage and infrastructure.
The load growth in general can have impacts on reliability of the supply.
But what does 9.5 million gallons actually look like? With how much water Meta's data center could be using a day, that's like the equivalent of doing 400,000 loads of laundry in your house.
What happens right now is in exchange of incentive for deployment for perceived benefits in the future, and these benefits are not exactly clear.
Kansas City has a water capacity of 240 million gallons a day. The highest record usage number in 2023 was 150 million gallons of water.
The question isn't, do we have the water? Yes, we have the water. It's just getting it to those developments is the challenge.
David Poyer is a KC Water engineer in charge of pipeline delivery systems.
The developer bears that additional cost to get the water to their particular development.
According to Google's contract, they'll pay for any initial infrastructure to increase KC's water capacity. But any infrastructure upgrades to the public water system is going to cost KC Mo.
What's the impact to everyday users? I'd say none.
KC Water will start supplying Google's data center in 3 weeks, but their expected usage is confidential. If it's similar to other data center operations, they could use millions of gallons of water a day too. Kansas City's Northland is on track to have 4 massive data centers.
Do you think that we have enough infrastructure to support all of these projects?
Absolutely. The public should not be worried about the impact, the level of service.
Now, the KC Water director did not make himself available to answer my questions about the impact on customers' bills. I instead received a statement saying the department understands there are concerns from neighbors, but the department assures that all of the quality services will not change. For now, in the studio, Isabella Ladon, KSHB 41 News.
So where are the brainwashed environmentalists, right? Probably some of the dumbest people walking the earth. They really, truly are. These people who tie themselves up to the trees, sit in the roads in front of people who are driving their cars for the environment. I mean, these people, we talk about people being under mind control. I mean, it's so clear about photosynthesis, carbon emissions, what the carbon is they're trying to reduce. It's the most basic common sense out there that this is a big scam for Big Brother to force us into living like prisoners. But these people just don't seem to get it. So why are they, who are obsessed with carbon emissions, who are telling people not to drive gas-powered cars, why are they not fighting back against how much carbon these things are going to use? The carbon intensity of electricity used by data centers was 48% higher than the U.S. average. But you don't hear any of them protesting, right? Because everybody loves their tech, right? Then you get stuff like this from CNET. AI data centers are massive, energy hungry, and headed your way. And I wanted to read you this article because it just came out from CNET. And I want you to think to yourself, because all this stuff I've talked about with data centers, does anybody ask the question of what we need them for and what they do? Now, we know the data in there is everything that we've ever done on the internet. It's our digital twin, our digital profile, everything like that. Every picture you ever upload, it's all in there, okay? And they have to store all this stuff. It's, it's not, most people are such suckers. They think that this is for their benefit. They're like, oh, I have all my pictures of my grandkids in the cloud. So yeah, we need these data centers so that I can continue to have my pictures up there in the cloud. This is obviously for more than that. This is to create a profile on you. And of course, when we start seeing the surveillance state reveal itself, even though it's already in place, we'll start seeing targeted individuals like you and me where they use this stuff against us. They'll talk about what we have said in the past on the internet. They'll turn us into terrorists. They'll turn us into modern day Osama bin Ladens. And next thing you know, we'll be executed in the streets because that's really what they're going to do with a lot of this data, in addition to other things, which we know they have the ability to do, which we'll get into in detail in other videos. But when we talk about the data centers, do you ever hear anybody say why we need these? We just hear Trump saying $500 billion for a data center, $500 billion. And none of these people ask a question and go, what do we need this for? Right? None of them are even questioning what the AI is here for when they're telling you AI is going to take your job and it's going to murder you in the future. Well, this says right here perfectly, right? This is what we need this for. This is what we need billions of our tax dollars to go into. This is a data center, folks. Facilities like it are increasingly common across the U.S., sheltering the machinery that makes our online lives not only possible, but nearly seamless. Data centers host our photos and videos, stream our Netflix shows, handle financial transactions, and so much more. The one I'm visiting, owned by a company called DataBank, is modest in scope. The ones coming in, one after another, to suburban communities and former farmlands across the U.S., riding the tidal wave of artificial intelligence shift advances are monstrous. Yeah, it sounds like what we need, right? We need these massive databases. We're told constantly to donate every time we go to a store, right? You go to a pet store, can you donate $10? What? You go to, a grocery store, can you donate money? Everybody's in need, right? Everyone's in need. People are starving in all these countries, and they're building a data center for $500 billion so we could stream Netflix shows faster, right? And it's for us, for our photos and videos. Yeah, well, it's for our photos and videos, but it's not for our entertainment. It is obviously to be used in this digital prison against us. So we need people to start paying attention to these things. We need to start mapping out where they're located, because it'll be pivotal at a time when people actually band together. But of course, in the next 10 years, it's now in law. It's now been passed that nobody's going to do anything about it. You're not allowed to. Can't do anything about it. Can't even say anything about it. I'm sure maybe I'll take this video down off the website for talking about it, right? They don't even want you to think about it, is clearly what's going on. They don't even want you to think about it. They want you to think that AI is what their new AI searches are, right? They're like, oh, AI governance, AI this. And people are like, well, what's the big deal? I go into Google now, I type something, and then AI gives me the answer. Grok gives me the answer. And these people just think that it's something like that. They don't ask a question. They don't have any suspicion or any doubts about this technocracy that's being built out around us by Donald J. Trump, who might be the worst president. Well, he's clearly the worst, because we've never seen a new world order pushed in like this. But in the minds of the brainwashed conservatives, he's the greatest president of all time. That's how dumbed down these people are. That's how badly they are under mind control. You could thank the alt-right media. Because you're not going to hear them talk about this stuff. They're not talking about data centers. They're like talking about data centers like it's an afterthought. Like, oh, they're a given. We got to have them. Huh? Got to have them for what? So you could stream? What are you going to stream? You want to stream Saved by the Bell faster? I mean, what are you streaming? Yeah, we need data centers. Yeah, they're coming. Ben Shapiro. Yeah, they're coming. All these guys. No one's going, why are they coming? What about the resources? It sounds like if they're going to use that much water, that we're going to struggle to be able to have enough water for ourselves, right? We're not going to have sprinklers anymore, not going to have showers anymore. Well, yeah, those are all things that are coming. You're going to ration it. How about the electricity? And isn't it interesting how all this stuff is happening at the same time that we see all of the weather modification? They tell us that all this stuff is from the climate change, and then the things that have to happen to make climate change go away and to make the climate normal is that we need to give up electricity and we need to give up water. And where's it all going? Oh, it's going to the data centers, right? It's going to all these dorks in big tech who are the ones censoring us and silencing us and bringing in the beast system with this fallen angel technology, because that's really what this stuff actually is. So be aware of the data centers. We're going to talk in a lot more detail here on the website about data centers in the future. Every single thing that we could actually uncover about locations of where they are, the functionality of these places, how much actual resources are going to be taken from these states and given and allocated to these data centers without the actual permission of the citizens, because they don't even know that it's happening and they're being told that it's happening because of the climate, right? And we all need to know how to prepare against it in the future, because it doesn't seem like anybody now is going to notice until it's too late. And when it's too late, they'll start realizing it. But most of the people probably have Neuralinks embedded in them already, and these data centers will already be controlling their minds if they're not already. So welcome to 2025, folks. Are we in hell? I mean, really, what we're talking about here? I mean, when I was 10 years old, it's a long ways away, but this was not what I envisioned the world to be like when I was a full-grown adult. Be talking about stuff like this and seeing stuff like this built out around me without any pushback whatsoever. Scary time to be alive, but obviously for those of us who have faith and have salvation through Christ, we don't need to worry. But there are lots of souls that are at stake. We're talking mark of the beast, okay? We're talking about innocent children who are going to grow up with technology around them, and their parents are going to feed it to them because their parents don't have a clue about what it's really here to do and what it's here for. And they're going to get sucked into this beast system. So we got to get information out while we can. I thank you all for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.